folks keeping the barbarians from the gate.
I got into the labor movement not because I wanted to negotiate wages. I got into the labor movement because I saw it as a vehicle to do massive social change to improve the lots of people.
Let's take these son of a out and give America back to America where we belong. Thank you very much. Thank you.
As far as I'm concerned, the Tea Party can go straight to hell.
Hey, welcome back to the program. Start of hour number 2 on this absolutely gorgeous Northern Michigan Tuesday. I'm Brian Summerfield with Trucker Randy. We are your defending fathers. Let me give you the phone numbers real quick before we introduce our guests. Phone numbers to be a part of the program today, 231-347-4382 or 855-548-0504. Facebook chats opened up across the board. And we have with us right now on the line Eileen Weiser. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Good morning, Eileen. I wanted to have you in on the show this morning because my daughter, Sherry, lives in Traverse City. She has 2 elementary school children, 9 and 11, 3rd and 5th graders in TCAPs. And she, can you hear me okay,
yes,
Eileen?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Okay. She had her children since kindergarten up at Old Mission Peninsula Elementary. And in talking to a lot of her neighbor friends that live down in Huron Hills subdivision where she's at, their kids go to Eastern Elementary. And she was noticing homework and assignments in math and what books they were reading were a little bit more advanced than what Tori and Tyler were doing up at Old Mission. And as a result, my daughter is very much engaged in her children's education. She goes into and volunteers 3 days a week to help the teachers. She raised $36,000 for them to get smart boards in the elementary school up there. She's a member of the PTO, very engaged and going online constantly researching stuff. And my daughter actually, after doing a lot of, extensive research, said that she was in favor of Common Core standards and the type of testing they did and things like that. She ended up moving her kids to Eastern, and they're actually doing a lot better now, and they're doing online test scores, problems, and things that are posted by Common Core. As a result, I came out in favor of it and thought it was a good thing based on what my daughter said. But I am getting viciously attacked by all my Tea Party friends. I've been debating Tom McMillan yesterday on his Facebook page, good friend of mine, state representative there from Rochester Hills. And I just wanted to get your perspective as a State Board of Education member. Where do you stand on this Common Core issue?
Well, first, Trucker Randy, I am thrilled to be on your show. And my husband, Ron, says hello. We're delighted that you are engaging in this debate. I think it's really important to remember that good people and good Republicans and good Tea Party members can all have differences of opinions. And I want to congratulate Sherry. She is, in my eyes, if we could just clone her and transplant her around the state, our schools would be in much better shape.
Absolutely.
And it's terrific for your kids that they're close by you or reasonably close. So your grandkids and your children. The thing that I would say about Common Core is that it's a progression of the work that was started under President Reagan when the Nation at Risk report was issued in 1983. And we've completely lost sight in this debate over the passion against the current administration's efforts to federalize health care. We've completely lost sight of the children in this debate and why we're trying to improve standards and have more rigor in the curriculum. I was corresponding last night with a staunch patriot from Traverse City, from Hillsdale on the Internet. And one of the things that is completely lost in this debate is that Michigan right now ranks in the low to mid-30s on math and reading in 4th and 8th grade on the NAEP, the Nation's Report Card. More important, when you look at the country against other countries like Singapore, Finland, other what we call developed countries in the around the world, we rank about 25th, 26th in math comprehension and ability to perform. That means that our country is at risk over time as more and more people in India and China become educated, and the interest in finding good workers could shift overseas. So there's a regional, local, a state, and a national debate on this that is very important. I come down firmly on the side of the Common Core state standards. First of all, they're standards. They're not a curriculum. Every single district develops their own, which is why you're seeing Traverse City do so well in Eastern Elementary and their other schools. They're concerned about this. It was the standards were passed in 2010, and a lot of districts have already incorporated them. They like them because of the specificity. For example, in the 3rd grade, we have seen always in the United States that we tend to teach math a mile wide and an inch deep. That meant that a lot of kids made it through elementary school without ever really understanding how math worked and not knowing their math facts. So now in 3rd grade, if a child doesn't know their math facts to 10 for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, it's a warning for the teachers in the school that that child may have a learning disability. They may be just developmentally delayed for a little bit on those things. The teacher may not be conveying the material well, or the curriculum could be a mismatch for the children who are in the classroom. And that's... Go ahead.
Well, one of the questions, just to back up a little bit, because one of the arguments that a lot of the Tea Party people, Tom McMillan, Senator Colbeck, who I talked to at CPAC on Saturday about this, so many of them are using the argument that we're turning our state's curriculum, we're losing local and state control, and we're turning it over to Obama and the federalism, basically, of our education system here in Michigan if we pass Common Core.
Well, Common Core has been passed. It has been in use in Michigan schools now since 2010. It's not a curriculum. It's a set of state standards that the states pulled together and developed through the National Governors Association and what's called the Chiefs, the Council of Chief State School Officers. Both of them are nonprofits. If you go to the official Common Core State Standard website, you will see their logos, and you can flip to getting more information about them and understanding more of why this is not a federal curriculum. What happened was that when Race to the Top, which was a competitive grant program that spent billions and billions of dollars on 11 states, when that race opened up, a number of states understood that their standards in math and English language arts, which are the only two that the governors did and the chiefs did, that their standards were very low and that they weren't teaching enough rigor for kids to be able to get into college, even community colleges without remediation, or get into the workforce. So when the feds did the program, unfortunately, there were 485 points that were awarded in total to be able to compete. Only 40 went to adopting Common Core, but 45 states did that because they saw the advantages. Since then, nobody has left it, although there certainly are political efforts underway right now to tar and feather what is a very good educational program with political passion over overreach by the federal government because of that, because they did that. And out of $2.4 trillion that was spent by the feds on education in the 4-year period covered by Race to the Top, about, I think it's $4.35 billion went to those 11 states. That still leaves 34 states who have looked at this, decided that they have value for their children, and have stuck with it despite political pressure. That may change because every state now is being approached through the Tea Party to ask them to reevaluate. My concern on this is that the focus is lost for the children. Right now in Michigan, 28% of our kids who go on to community college need academic remediation if they've chosen to take coursework that would transfer to a 4-year institution. Informally, I'm told by community college presidents that up to 60% of the kids who come through the doors in a community college have to relearn the material they were supposed to be taught in K-12. What I don't see the Tea Party doing is looking at that expense and marveling at the fact that we're putting kids' lives on hold because we are concerned about something that was marginally used by the federal government, but is actually a nonprofit and state adventure. And I see the concern. I understand creeping federalism, and certainly the feds did us absolutely no good on this when they said, hey, this is a good thing, why don't you join it and we'll give you more points. But 40 out of 485 is fewer than 10% of points for this. Certainly if the states understood the value for children and stayed in it, I think that we should be evaluating that.
Well, listen, if you can stay on through the break, one of those Tea Party skeptics is my radio partner here, Brian Summerfield, and I'm sure he's got some questions for you.
I would love to answer them.
Great. Let's go to a break, Brian, and continue the discussion with Eileen when we get back.
Stick around. We are your defending fathers.
One thing I said that I would never do. A look from you and I would fall from grace.
Welcome back to the program on this Tuesday morning. I am Brian Summerfield along with Trucker Randy. We are joined by Eileen Weiser this morning on the program talking this segment about Common Core. And
Brian, I want to give you now the floor. I want you to make State Representative McMillan and all the Tea Party leaders from across the state of Michigan proud in your questions for Eileen Weiser.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead. You have the floor.
Actually, I've got some questions across the board on Facebook before we even get to that. The first comment I got on this segment was central planning. When does central planning ever work?
Well, central planning doesn't ever work. That's why states have their rights, and that's why they do what they want to do. I think the thing that we should look at is when does local planning and local control fail children? So one of the things that I usually bring up at this point is that in 2006, when Michigan did finally adopt a curriculum for high school, which the legislature did, the State Board of Education approved standards, and local districts generally in the past have done their own curriculum, and they still do have that right, with the exception of the Common Core, of the Michigan Merit Curriculum, which is the high school curriculum. The hassle is that in 2006, we found out that we just had one requirement for graduation from high school. That was a semester of civics. So Michigan schools were all over the map in terms of student achievement. That's okay if you're in a high-spending, high-achieving district, but it's not okay if you're in a high-spending, low-achieving district, and we had lots of those. So in 2006, we put in a rigorous high school curriculum, and that's the only curriculum that exists on the state level. Everything else is state standards and state benchmarks. As a result, we still have pockets across the state that don't achieve well. It's hard to tell if we don't ask them to do as much as we can, whether they can be doing more. We have teacher resistance and union resistance to higher standards. When we did the review in 2006 and adopted the high school curriculum, we found that Michigan had been teaching in 8th grade economics for years, decades, that business practices drive markets. Not that markets drive business practices, and that's a key. Business practices driving markets is socialism. So one person's idea of what the best thing is for children may not match up with what a better informed group of people in a larger area can say, wait a minute, you don't want to teach that. That won't get us where we need to go as a state.
Don't you think even with just that example that you just gave that there's no more pure example of socialism than government schools?
Well, if I could blow apart the entire system and have every parent do exactly what Sherry's doing and be involved in their school district and helping make things work, I would do that in a nanosecond. Certainly, we're watching in Detroit as parents are abandoning the public school system there for charter schools, where they feel they have a better voice in their child's education, and they're allowed in. A lot of public schools aren't comfortable with parents being in the mix for good cause. So on a purely philosophical basis, I agree with you. I just live with how things play out. And what my oath of office is to figure out, I take it as an effort to make sure that every child in this state has a crack at a good education, a chance to work with high standards and qualified teachers and come out in the end with an education that allows them to be in the workforce through 2060, which is what we're looking at right now, to be a really good, productive family member and community member, but also to be a good citizen. And I see a wide variance in ability of school districts to move that agenda forward.
Here's where I see Common Core into play on this. And this is, I think, an error in a lot of people that try to solve problems. If you ever talk to a builder, it's easier to build a brand new house than it is to go in and do a remodel project. And the reason why is when you're doing remodel work, a lot of times you're dealing with existing walls, existing things, and it restricts what you can really do. And, again, I'm not going to, I think that's the wrong analogy that when I hear people say, well, it's just putting lipstick on a pig, because it's not. You're taking something that is semi-functioning in the form of a house and saying, okay, we need to make sure that it really functions and it works. But you don't know what's inside the walls and how to change things inside that existing structure. And sometimes in problem solving, we get so stuck with what we currently have and try to make tweaks and make that work. And I feel that's exactly what Common Core is trying to do. Now, if I go back and say, where did education start at this country, and go back to a one-room schoolhouse, there's a lot of people that say, well, look at all the great people that came out of one-room schoolhouses and look how much they learned and how they progressed and brought forth the greatest revolution in the history of mankind. Or you could go back to when Randy and I were in school back in the late 70s, early 80s, and say, we learned a lot, we were educated well. What happened between that time period and today?
Can I address that?
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, because I have a bad feeling I'm older than either of you, what we had was a more homogenous population. When I was in school, and I'd be interested in hearing the kind of neighborhoods you grew up. I grew up in Saginaw, and everybody around us, the big differences in my neighborhood were whether they were Italian or German instead of Irish. But moms were home. Kids weren't watching TV, and we had. I remember in my school, it was a Catholic school, and we got a Methodist, and that was the big variant. So if you grew up in a more split neighborhood, then the teachers had a few more challenges. But back in the 50s and 60s and even 70s, teachers were dealing pretty much with a set of kids who had certain expectations at home, not a lot of divorces, and a common, it's not a common ethnic heritage, certainly a common income level. Now what we've got is classrooms that in many cases have a broad spectrum of social issues. They have kids we now have 5-year-olds who are coming in who've grown up on iPads and iPods. And we still have teachers in our schools, many of them, who were trained and have not yet moved away from the model of being able to talk at children or lecture them at an early age and not really work with them constructively to make sure that they're learning. So that's a learning style issue, and as somebody said recently, computers will never replace teachers, but teachers who use computers will replace teachers who don't. So I live on a daily basis. I'm in the schools. I'm in charter schools. I'm in traditional public schools. What we know right now is that the number of charter schools in the state, while the Catholic... You
got about 15 seconds.
Okay. We know that kids who are in charter schools are doing better right now than the kids who are in traditional public schools, but we can't create more charter schools fast enough for kids.
Can you stay on for one more segment?
Sure, sorry.
Okay, love to ask you some more questions. A lot of things coming in across the board on Facebook. Stick around. We'll continue the conversation. We are your Defending Fathers.
This is Brian Summerfield and Trucker Randy, your Defending Fathers on 106.3 Patriot Voice.
Welcome back to the program on this Tuesday, talking about Common Core in this hour. We're also, there's a story breaking in the outskirts of Petoskey right now. It sounds like there was a dead body found, and we are trying to get information on that as soon as we possibly can. I've got somebody working on that right now. We will get the information out as soon as we possibly can. We're also joined by Eileen Weiser. She has done an incredible job of staying through a couple commercial breaks and in explaining education and trying to get to the bottom of the Common Core debate. From your last comments, this is actually my wife was listening today. I'm so impressed, and she's a teacher, and in her response to your last segment was that we just need a lot more respect and accountability for teachers and for students. That there is seems to be a lot of lack of respect in this.
Yeah, a lack of respect in Common Core, or in more rigor, or just in general in the conversation.
I think overall is what Blanca's point is. But getting back to Brian's question, a lot of these, again, 10th Amendment state sovereignty arguments that the Tea Party people are using, and I'm right there with them, Eileen. I'm the first one to say, I want Michigan to do it. I don't want Washington telling us what to do. And it's almost like a misnomer that they have the impression, including State Representative McMillan, that this is going to be federal control over our curriculum, and you're saying that is not the case.
That's absolutely not the case. So I first of all, let me just say, I respect tremendously the passion of people who are angry about Obamacare. I mean, since when did we elect presidents who swear transparency and then sign a bill before it's even been read by the Congress on health care? So I understand the anger.
Someone that's a Muslim that abides by Sharia law, and we could add a few more things like that, but we'll keep it clean because it's a family show.
I'm a statewide elected official. I stick my nose into education, and that's where I belong, and I'm there for the kids. So, there's two arguments about Common Core that tend to merge in a very odd way. One is about the educational value. The second one is about the political aspects. On the educational value, I am rock solid behind the new state standards. I'm rock solid behind next generation science standards because they will allow math and science teachers to integrate and not teach in silos anymore. You show me a 6th through 12th grade boy who's capable of having a droning science teacher, even if they blow something up occasionally to keep them interested. You show me a kid who can learn math and science without having the two of them woven together, and I'll show you a very bright child. As a number of my Boy Scout friends say, that's why we have Boy Scouts, is to make sure the kids understand that they can work together on these things and have it come out and mean something for their future. So the political arguments on this, I have tremendous respect for it. There's no question that we are in a situation right now where people don't trust the federal government. Even there, when you go back, the feds have never tried to make an effort to require this for what's called Title I and Title II funding, or for Perkins, or any of their standing programs. It was a grant competition that they put together, which I don't think even has worked very well in the states who have it. And before we go, are you saying that there's a funding problem? No, funding problem for what? K-12?
Yeah.
Michigan spends the 9th highest amount of money in the country, according to the Census Bureau. Total dollars, millages, floating, sinking bonds, everything, bond money, and state money and federal money. The 9th highest amount in the country, and yet we consistently rank in the middle to low 30s in 4th and 8th grade achievement in math and English language arts on the NAEP. And we're below the average in science. When you look at our scores compared against international benchmarking, which of course is another argument on Common Core, educational argument. When you look at how our kids compare in our language abilities and our math abilities to other developed, high-functioning countries, we don't do so great.
On that point right there, Eileen, I'd like to interject. We saw the movie Waiting for Superman.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but I'm gonna just say it, whether it's politically correct or not. I believe that if you're spending you're the 9th highest spending state in the country, and your public union teachers that have tenure as a result of what they call being rewarded for dedication, where you can't fire a bad teacher in this state, that's why you get, out of 9th and highest in spending, you get 34th ranking as results, because the teachers, many of them, need to be fired, and we can't fire them in this state.
Well, we're moving toward that, and that's an interesting point, because for the first time this fall, we're going to start moving toward teacher accountability on accreditations, on evaluations, actually, the teacher evaluation program. And it's been, that also was part of that Race to the Top application. Remember those 485 points? You got points if you put a teacher evaluation system into place. Yep. The American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten, who was featured in Waiting for Superman, just came out and said, yep, we're behind the demonstrations in New York State against the Common Core, because we want federal dollars to train teachers, to retrain teachers, which most schools, like Traverse City, view as a standard cost of doing business. You're continually retraining your personnel. Every company does that. You're continually trying to move them forward to do better for kids. So Randy came out and said, yep, we're not fond of this, and we don't want to have any new assessments in that will show what teachers are able to do in the classroom at the same time that we're evaluating teachers. Now, I'm sympathetic to that, but this has been on this trajectory for the last 3 years. And immediately in the U.S. Senate, a bill was proposed saying, you know what, if the federal government, U.S. DOE, tries to give Randy Weingarten more money for teacher training from the federal budget, we're not going to go there on Common Core. So, there's a delicate dance taking place on unions. I am a firm supporter of teachers. Where unions do well by their teachers and by the children, I will be the first person to say thank you very much. But when you start saying we're not going to evaluate teachers, we're not going to have improved testing, we're not going to have improved rigor because we're comfortable with things the way they are, then the Tea Party needs to take a look at that, scratch their head and say, well, wait a minute. Are we comfortable with what schools and teachers are doing right now overall for our kids? And I don't think we are. There are lots of indicators that we shouldn't be.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I almost wanted to shoot my TV when watching that movie, and I saw those teachers in New York State sitting in that holding room, sleeping and reading newspapers for 7 hours a day, costing that state $100 million a year, instead of it being put into the Bronx in Harlem, where these kids needed the money and the funding. These kids are sitting for a lottery to try to get a seat into a good charter school, and those kids that didn't get in while those teachers are sitting there getting their full pay. I mean, this system is screwed up.
Well, the reason you feel that way is because if it were the automobile industry, you just wouldn't buy the product. But you're bringing up the very point that Brian was talking about a little bit ago, which is remodeling rather than rebuilding. If, as I said, about 5% of our kids are in charter schools, that's the most we can touch right now. We're able to start cyber schools. We're able to start new charter schools, but the people who want to try and bring all of that together and spend their energy doing it and then making it work are few and far between right now. We're seeing an influx of them, but not 90% of our schools. So unions exist for a reason. They exist to protect adults from change. And as I said, I don't have a beef with the union, and I support my teachers. My problem is that when unions get in the way of kids, I can't go there. I remember about 4 years ago, a union rep that I really liked personally and was terrific. When I talked to her about something, she said, Eileen, everybody here in this room knows that you think the children are at the center of education. Not a single one of us holds that against you. So if you recognize that they are paid union dues to represent their members, they are doing a good job for them. It's our job to say that's not how we want our schools to be run. We want them to be centered on children. We want children to have rigor and high standards, and we want them to achieve. And we think that you can be part of that.
Well, I think when we look at that statement, at both sides of it. One, Randy and I have done numerous stories of where the unions have gotten in the way of education, and for the wrong side of it as well. But I think if you lay that down, that list, everybody wants, when they get out of school, to have the best education possible, to be able to, again, part of education isn't just learning, it's being able to teach yourself. Because let's face it, you probably do a lot more learning. I think you're older than Randy and I. You've learned so much more after you got done with probably even college than what you ever learned prior to that in either K through 12 or college. I'd be the same way. Randy would probably be the same way.
Brian, I have a terrible secret to tell you. You don't know what my degrees are in. Piano performance.
Piano performance? But that seems to lend itself towards a charter school model where, being able to integrate the arts into education will stimulate the learning in a lot of other areas.
That's how I got That's how I got involved. That's how I ended up running for State Board of Ed, because I brought an arts-infused curriculum to Ann Arbor and to southeastern Michigan and was stunned to hear union objections to having children actually learn a wider curriculum. So, yes, that's the genesis.
Got another comment.
One quick question, Brian. Hold on 1 second. One argument that is coming from the Tea Party folks is that they don't want to have our history rewritten. They don't want our children to learn the revisionist history that the secular progressive communists are trying to get into our school books. What do you say about Common Core and its relationship to this part of the curriculum, our history, our civics, our government?
Okay, Common Core is only in 2 subjects, and it's standards. It's not curriculum. I keep on saying that because I know you have new listeners joining. So it's only in English language arts and in math. I have a link to an interview that John Engler did, I think, last week with Mike Huckabee, both of whom support the Common Core state standards. That may come to a shock as as a shock to listeners, because they don't tend to see a high leadership talking about this, governors, and they don't trust the president. But in all of this, you just have to keep on focusing. Does it do good things for kids? And the answer is yes, and I'll send you that interview because it'd be great if you spread the link around so people can listen to why Mike Huckabee and John Engler believe that this is good for kids.
Well, one of the arguments in that vein, then, is it's not true because it doesn't have anything to do with history or government or civics, but at this slippery slope thing. Once we introduce Common Core, then it will be expanded to include history, government, and civics.
Okay, so there is an independent, separate effort that's not endorsed by the National Governors Association or by the Council of Chief State School Officers because they weren't part of it, to do social studies. I haven't seen the results of that, but it'll be evaluated on its own ability. The Next Generation Science Standards have been heard twice now in the last 8 months at the State Board of Education for review, and they've been posted, and they're on our agenda to be approved next week. As I bring this up, I just want you to know I also was on the board that does the Nation's Report Card for 8 years, and last summer I did a release on the what's called the Science ICS and HOTS, the Interactive Computer Tests and the Hands-On Tasks. When we did that assessment of 4th, 8th, and 12th graders, we found out that while about half of the kids could take a story problem and do an experiment with different variables and design an experiment and say, this is what I'm testing for. You've got a lake that's polluted, you got a paper plant on it, you got a lot of farming around it, you're finding phosphates in the water. How do you decide whether the phosphates come from which place? They can put that science experiment together, which is a credit to our schools, but about half of them then can come up with the right answer, but only 11% of the kids who were tested were capable of connecting the data that they developed with the answer, which means that 39% of them may have had a lucky guess, or it may have been solved it intuitively. Now think about it for a minute. That 11% of kids becomes our scientists, our political leaders, our voters, our people who are going to be working internationally, and we're not educating enough kids on science to get an informed electorate. We don't have voters who are going to come up on this and know what they're doing. When you look at history and civics, the new English language arts requirements have more informational text. Now, that's upsetting the high school teachers who are trained on romance literature and literature in general. And people will tell you can only get critical thinking through literature. I'm sorry, but I can get that through reading the Magna Carta, through the Declaration of Independence, and through other historical documents which are classified as informational text. Informational text is everything from being able to read graphs and charts to support math and science learning to learning how to read software instructions. I right now have a printer that won't work, and I cannot for the life of me figure out how to fix it.
Is it a Mac or is it a PC?
It's a PC. see.
There's your problem.
I know. I knew you were going to say
Oh,
that.
shut up, Brian.
The MAC people are evangelical. It's even worse than the Tea Party on Common Core. I give up. But with all of this, there is no effort to undermine civics or history. The standards are posted. They have been, and we have a crosswalk against what the state standards used to be before 2010. It's available on the website. And the National Governors Association, the chiefs have all that information. You can go into it, see their recommended text. I mean, I am teaching my 6th grader right now at home some of the 7th or 8th grade texts because they're challenging, thoughtful, and wonderful. There is no effort on this to undermine history or civics, but again, recognize why people are concerned. It's because there has been an erosion in other areas in the federal government. We can stop this at any point. If for some reason the governors blow it, right now about 30 of them are Republicans, but say that they somehow managed to have propaganda creep into what was done by the states that's posted on their websites, we can then decide to pull out. This is not a federal force curriculum or federal force standards. It is a group of standards that we've adopted because we believe they have high rigor and value for children and that they will help teachers teach better.
Eileen, thank you so much for spending this much time with us. I'm going to turn this interview into a YouTube video and post it on my Facebook page and all over Facebook because I think the information you shared is important, and we're going to also repost that interview. Friend me on Facebook and post that Huckabee Engler interview, and we'll get that spread around as well.
You're terrific. Thank you so much for doing this for people. They need the information badly.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thanks,
Weiser.
Eileen.
We
Appreciate it.
you
My
being
pleasure.
on. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stick around. Final segment of this hour coming up. We are your defending fathers. Well, welcome into the final segment of hour number 2 on Your Defending Fathers. I do not know if I have time to get every single comment in over the last 40 minutes, but I'm going to try here in the fleggling minute of this.
Rapid fire, Brian. Let's
go. Parents need to get involved in the education of their kids locally.
Amen.
Another comment, have any Tea Party members attended school meetings? Question thrown out there. I don't know how relevant that is. Tea Party members across the board have experiences from every walk in life, just like any other group of people. And kind of a follow-up to that, what teaching experience does Tea Party members have? Again, it's broad-based. Only people that can change education is strong leadership of parents. So again, getting back to, and I like that because it gets back to local control, local involvement. Another one, my wife was an educator for over 30 years, opposes Common Core or any attempt to allow federal government involvement. It should be local and district control, not federal government.
How has that worked out for us, Brian? 9th highest spending in the country, 34th response ratings on the testing. How's it worked out so far?
Well, what local control have we had? It has all been. It is all. No. It has all been fed to us from the federal government, tied to dollars. You're going to get this money, but here's what you're going to teach.
Oh, so basically this is the same thing? Common Core is the same thing of what we've already been experiencing?
Pretty much. It's just dressed up in a different way. Stick around. More to come. We are your defending fathers.
This is the Patriot Voice Radio Network.